Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pete's Epic Golf Podcast. Join golfer Pete as he interviews international and local golf experts and enthusiasts. Golfer Pete's guests are looking to share how his audience can improve their golf game by improving their mindset, skill set, and gear set. We ask our experts to share their practical tips on golf in one or more of these three core areas. Golfer Pete created his podcast as a resource for anyone who loves golf. Join Golfer Pete as he asks the questions we all need answers to in order to improve our golf game.
Hey, I want to welcome our viewers to a special podcast. We have a gentleman I've known for a few years, and I've always been educated by his thought about the wedge game. And so when I asked him to come on, it was really to educate our viewers how important that 80 yards in, 100 yards in, that's the scoring zone. And if you're going to be a good golfer, you better master that part of your game. So I want to have Terry introduce himself, who he is, what company he's with, and who he serves in the golf market. So Terry, could you please share with our viewers?
Sure, and thanks for having me on, Pete. My name's Terry Koehler. I've been in the golf industry 40 years, the last 30 very focused on the wedge category. And I approach wedges very differently from everybody else. Everybody's focused on the tour player and tour validated, tour certified. My observation of golfers over my whole life is that the skill sets of even good amateur golfers, single digits, is very different from the skill sets of the tour pros that we see illustrated every week on the tour. These guys are magicians around the green, right? And not because of their wedges, but because they've spent thousands of hours perfecting these skills. And so you see the tour design wedges from all the major brands, they all look pretty much alike. They work pretty much alike, because if they didn't, these guys couldn't change from brand to brand without major disruption and upheaval. Mm-hmm. I've chosen a different path. I'm looking at the 5-6 handicapper up to the 18, 20, 24 handicapper. Okay. I watched the challenges these guys have. So I created a company. Edison Golf is my current company. And I've put everything I've learned about wedges in 30 years into the Edison wedges. We just introduced our second generation, Edison 2.0. And it's everything I've learned about how to make wedge shots more consistent, more forgiving of those half-inch, three-quarter-inch mishits that we all do, and more versatile for the different kinds of turf we're going to encounter, because this bounce and grind thing is so confusing to everybody. Right. So it's really about distance consistency, forgiveness of your slight mishits, and turf versatility, so that it doesn't matter where you play or what kind of lie you have. And that's what Edison Golf is all about, Pete.
So as our viewers understand from your eyes of 30 plus years of experience in the short game, what would be your advice for just the average golfer? Why would they want to put education and understanding of that element of their game to be able to improve? Because I do agree with you when people say they look at Rory hit a driver and they go, I got to have that driver. Well, that's him. That's not you. So wedge game, I feel, is probably the same way. And you've always been high on education, which I've really liked. So what would be the number one thing that an amateur between 5 and 18 needs to think about when it comes to being a better wedge player?
Well, there are two facets of this. One is the equipment you choose to play, and the second is the technique you choose to employ. And my experience is golfers don't really know what to practice in the short game, and it's not fun for most people to go to the range and hit 100 shots of 20 yards or less, just seeing different things you can do with the golf ball. But when you get into a round of golf, and I invite any of your listeners, is look at the last round of golf you played and look at how many shots you took inside 100 yards or 80 yards, whatever your strength profile, wherever that pitching wedge, gap wedge starts to come into play. And look at how many shots you could have saved had you been able to get those shots in the easy 2-putt range or occasional 1-putt range. And I always said, when you have a wedge in your hand for the second consecutive shot, you've really thrown one away. If you hit an approach wedge from 80 yards and you missed the green, now you're chipping with that wedge. What you want to get is your skills inside 100 yards where you can get it on the green and 2-putting 95% of the time, 1-putting some percent of the time, and never having to chip again. I mean, you're going to have that. Even the tour players, people don't realize these guys miss greens with wedges too. but the wedge by design, because it's got all this loft, is a difficult club to master. When I started playing golf in the dark ages back in the 50s as a kid and through the 60s and, my maturing golf into high school and college, the driver was the hardest club in the bag. These old Persimmon drivers, they were very unforgiving.
Yep.
And putting was the easiest because you roll the ball across the green in a hole. It doesn't take a lot of strength or anything. And we've really flipped the game around. Drivers are now easy to hit. It's got a big old head on it. It's sitting up on a peg. They've done a remarkable job with technology of making them forgiving. But now we're putting faster and slicker and firmer green complexes than back then. And so putting and chipping, and mastering chipping and pitching into these firm and fast surfaces has become the hardest part of the game, because most courses now, they're heavily fortified around the greens with bunkers and hollows and swales. And if you're going to score, whether you're trying to break 100 or 90 or 80 or par, you've got to be really capable inside wedge range. Because even if you look at the PGA Tour, people don't realize this. We watch these guys every week. Bryson DeChambeau shot a 58 last week. These guys hit 90% of their approaches with wedges. I mean, they're playing, they're so long. They're not beating the golf course with 6 and 7 iron shots, except on par fives. Right. And a lot of people don't realize, but year after year, as a whole, the PGA Tour is over par outside 9 iron range. And yet, and people don't realize that. But they're beating up on the par fives. They're just long par fours for those guys. And they're hitting 6, 8, 10, 12 wedge shots on the other holes. And so they're going to score, particularly when they have soft greens and no wind. But for any golfer, work on your technique, watch some videos, I'm a big believer in go to your golf professional and say, I want to learn a technique. And in my experience in observing golfers, I play with a wide group of guys of all handicaps. They hit the occasional good chip shot and they think that's repeatable, but it was done with a really bad technique. So it was an accident to have the good one.
Right.
And anybody can learn to take the club back 3 feet and through 3 feet to make a ball go 15 yards. And that doesn't take physical strength. It doesn't take a lot except the commitment to learn a good technique. And, and there are some basics to technique that nobody is incapable of doing, no matter, and we've talked about your health challenges lately, and you're getting back into chipping because, you're going to make that work because you can do this. You're not ready to hit drivers yet, but you can do this.
Yeah, 125 yards is my distance. That's a little bit less than Bryce out there. But one thing I wanted to ask you, because I play in captain's choices, and when I hit 60, I was able to play the up tees. So I'm still okay. Well, before the stroke, I was okay. So I would always tell my team, it's not the longest drive. It's where we feel comfortable distance-wise with our wedge. So are you saying to our viewers, like when it comes to comfort and knowing your wedge game, are you hitting to like 80 yards or 50 yards or 60 yards? Do you recommend that as being a person that has studied that short game? Or do you just getting as close as you can to the green?
That's a really good question. And I think you can make an argument for both, Pete. I remember years ago, Paul Lazinger and I got to know each other pretty well, and he won the PGA, and he would just dominated the par fives. And this back before, people were hitting all the par fives with a middle iron shot. Mm-hmm. And I remember the remark he made to the interviewer and his caddy's name was Billy Poor, and he said, Billy had me perfect yardages on the par five. So, he was a textbook pitching wedge, textbook gap wedge. He didn't have to manipulate yardage. It's like, hey, that's my 114 club, and Billy got my layup shot to 114. And I think that's a very strategic way to play. And Tom Kite was a master when the gap wedges or lob wedges first came out. And Tom Kite put that little 60-degree wedge with a big sole, and he could hit it in a hula hoop from 63 yards. That was the magic number. Right. And so, he was like, I want 63. I don't want 58. I don't want 67. I want 63 yards. You get me there, I'm going to hit it in a hula hoop because it's exact same swing. I'm not having to throttle it back. I think that I'm a big proponent of using multiple clubs for your pitch shots and learn a couple of swings. I think Dave Pelt's method is very scientific. It takes a lot of hours to learn it. And my thinking is, learn, a full swing, which isn't a hard swing with a wedge. It may be what we consider full, But I think your best wedge shots come at what is about 80% of what you perceive as club head speed. About 80%. And trajectory stays down, your contact consistency is better, and that will deliver better results. And then learn, what does that swing do with my pitching wedge, my gap wedge, my sand wedge, my lob wedge, my carry one, and then learn a half swing. And to me, a half swing is when the left arm or the lead arm is about parallel to the ground, and learn how to consciously swing to stop your swing at that.
Right.
And find out, what does that swing deliver with your 3 or 4 different wedges in the way of yardages. Now you've got 8 wedge shots with 2 swings.
Right.
And then you can work on throttling back your power from each swing position. And I have a friend I play with a lot. It's a really good wedge player. And you look at him from 20 yards and 60 yards, and it looks like he's taking the exact same swing length, but his pace is slower as he gets closer to green. But he makes enough of a swing to get a rhythm into it. And the little short chip shots and pitch shots where people get yippy, because, it's like people don't get yippy on 30-footers. They get yippy on 3-footers because that little short stroke is nervous. And the same with a little chip or a pitch. But, I think anybody can learn a good wedge technique, whether you're a 70-year-old, that hits a driver, 140, or whether you're a 70-year-old that hits a driver 240, whether you're a strapping young flat belly that these guys hit it for miles, you're gonna need good wedge technique to score the golf course. And I watch so many guys that I play with that are 15 to 25 handicappers, and you get through and it's like, there were 8 strokes out there you threw away around the greens. And, all of a sudden, you're not shooting 95. You're an 80 shooter if you learn how to hit it good from 40 yards and in,
Yeah, you're right. It seems like it's almost a stereotype. As we lose distance, the seniors often shift their focus to the short game because they don't have a long game anymore. So if they're going to score, they better master 100 yards in and putting. What would you say to the average golfer? How many wedges would you recommend, just in your experience? Is it 3? Is it 4? Give us some idea of that.
I get asked that all the time. And of course, I'm in the wedge business. So people would say, you're going to say 4 or 5, whatever. And I'm going to take that question. It's like, what is a wedge anyway? How do we define a wedge? So the name came about when the sand wedge was invented. And because of the design Gene Sarazen created, it was a wedge. You wedged the ball between the sand and the golf ball. And then, but you had a club in your bag that was a 10 iron that somehow became known as the pitching wedge. Hogan called theirs the equalizer, but it was McGregor always put a 10 on the bottom. Right. And that was a 51 or 52 degree golf club back then. Well, as the technology has gone into irons, this club with a P or a W on the bottom has migrated in loft. And pitching the golf ball, a pitched shot, requires loft. And the modern clubs with a P on the bottom have a 42 or 44, 45 degree loft. That in my world was an 8-iron, and you could hit bump and runs with that club. But just because it's got a W on the bottom doesn't make it a wedge. And, if you take, for example, the market of 3-woods, they all look pretty much alike. The market of drivers, they all look pretty much alike. But if you go to the market of wedges, you have these aftermarket tour design wedges from the major brand. You have the set match wedges that look like your 6-iron, which is another whole topic to get into. Your wedge should not look like a 6-iron. So this idea of counteracting the strengthening loss by buying the set matching gap and the set matching sand wedge is completely counterproductive, because that head design was designed to work really good on a 28 degree 6-iron. Not a 45 or 48, 50 degree wedge, high lofted golf club. And so, I think you go back to, forget what you call them. There are people that play hybrids all the way up to their 8 or 9 iron. They're playing with a lady that they doesn't have an iron in her bag. Everything is a wood design because she finds that easier to hit. So what you need is a golf club that will give you, whatever. Let's say you take your 9-iron range. Let's give the iron guys the 4 through 9 or 5 through 9 or 3 through 9. And however far that club goes for you, whether it's 110 or 165, it doesn't matter. But you're going to score the golf course inside that golf club, with lofts going higher than that. So what you need, I believe, is the number of clubs past your 9-iron that gives you really nice, consistent 10 or 12 degree gapping, but from, a standard full swing. And if your 9 goes 130, you want, a 118 to 120 club, and you want a, 110 to 111 club, and you want a 98 to 100 club, and you want a, 88 to 90 club. So you're not having to do as much manipulation in prime scoring range.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say, well, the tour pros don't carry that many. Well, you're not a tour pro. They can manipulate those in between yardages because they practice it all the time. And if you watch how those guys do them, they'll lay a towel out on the ground, or they'll put now with their launch monitors. And the old guys used to put the towels out on the ground at 70, 80, 90, 100, and they would hit shots to that towel. Well, now the guys are using launch monitors, and okay, there's 88 yards, and I can hit it 88 over and over and over 5 different ways: high, low, medium, with spin, without spin. I can hit it 88 yards 5 different ways. The rest of us are going, hey, my 88-yard club might go 74 and it might go 95. You can't score the golf course if you don't know how far it's going to go.
Right.
When you get into scoring range, and really all of your iron play is about how can I hit the ball 163? How can I hit the ball 107? That's what I found. And, I think we sometimes look at this backwards and we say, well, how far do you hit a 9-iron? The question should be, what do you hit from 145? What do you hit from 123?
Yeah.
We play the game by getting the yardage first and the club second. So why is the question asked the club first and the yardage second?
Yeah, I agree with you.
You've got it 154, slight wind in your face, the ground is soft a little bit, the greens are firm, you got a fluffy lie. All of that has to come into the equation of what am I going to do here? Mm-hmm. So, to the answer how many wedges, I think if we're going to abide by convention and your P club, as I call it, is 45 degrees, then, that matches your irons, then, you need to club at about 49, 53, 57, and maybe 61 if you like high loft clubs. Yeah. I personally think we sell them and we make them, but I think the higher the loft, the harder the club is to master them. Yeah. And, you ask most people, what's your favorite shot? What's your most confident club in your bag? Most people are going to say an 8 or a 9 or a 7.
Right.
Because that's an optimum. It's got plenty of loft to get the ball in the air, but not so much that the ball is sliding up the face. And that's what, people say my favorite club is my 7-iron or 8-iron. And, it's typically not my 3-iron, right? And It's never my sand wedge either.
But, it seems like and I've had this come up of the amount of times that really good players change out their wedges because of the grooves. What would the average golfer, we're into equipment. We buy equipment like the newest driver. We buy the newest this. What would you recommendation for the average guy? He doesn't have to spin it like the crazy pros do, and they don't have the distance. Well, what would be your recommendation on the life of wedges?
I don't think, and I know one of the major brands says you should replace your wedge every 70 rounds. Well, I think it depends on, what kind of turf do you play? How many bunker shots do you hit? Because bunker shots wear a wedge out faster than anything because you're
really? Okay.
sandblasting. And, the tour players change their wedges all the time, for several reasons. One is they hit lots and lots of practice shots. So they're hitting more shots per week with their wedge than most of us are going to hit in a year because that's what they do for a living.
Gotcha.
And
good point.
When they need a new wedge, they go to the van and get a new wedge, and it's free. The rest of us hey, we don't really get free golf clubs. So, I think you watch the face wear. If the chrome on the golf club is not worn off, then the metal cannot be worn out. The chrome plating on your golf club is extremely thin, like less than a human hair. People don't realize that. Okay. But if you haven't compromised the chrome, you haven't compromised the grooves. But what I can tell you this, and people, if you look at wedge advertising, you would think the wedge category is reduced to grooves and grinds. I call it the GG complex. Mm-hmm. And the proliferation of all these grinds has got people so confused. And, we have a kind of a unique sole design that I patented in the 1990s that puts 2 bounces on the sole. It's just super versatile. The grooves can only do so much. Grooves are like the tread on your tires. They are there to channel away moisture. They're not there to give you spin. They are there to increase friction by channeling away moisture, like the tread on your tires. If you were on a perfectly dry highway all the time, you would have slick tires on your car because they're more efficient. It's a better grip on the road. But because we do drive in the rain, and and if you drive city driving, you probably have one tread pattern on your tire. And if you drive out on the ranch in your truck in the mud, you have a different tread pattern on your tire.
Mhm.
But if the grooves can only do so much, what we've proven at Edison is the club head design itself is a huge design element of imparting spin.
Mhm.
And if you think like in the driver world, they are constantly chasing high launch and low spin, and they're doing it by putting all the weight in the bottom of the golf club, in the drivers, and these carbon fiber crowns, everything they can do to get the weight low. Well, where is the weight in your wedge? It's all at the bottom of the golf club. And therefore, your wedge, by design, wants to launch high with no spin. That's just the physics of golf clubs. Then you add a bunch of loft to the golf club, it's going to go high anyway. I mean,
Right.
very few people hit their wedges too low. My research is that 7% of golfers say they hit their wedges too low, and 80% say too high, and 13% say about right. So the reason wedges go so high is because the golf club is designed to make the ball go high with no spin.
Right.
And I said, that's crazy, because every golfer I know is trying to hit wedges with a penetrating trajectory with lots of spin so he can hold greens. And so that's why the Edison wedges don't look like anybody else's wedges. So they are designed to harness what we call gear effect and smash factor, which is gear effect is what makes the ball do certain things. Smash factor is the efficiency of energy transfer. So without getting too technical, we can't. But I can replace I see guys with wedges that the grooves are worn off of them. It's got a big old dark rust spot in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, they're way past time to replace them.
Yeah,
And
that visually would
they
probably.
need to replace them, every year. They go out and buy another $500 worth of wedges, and that's probably overkill for most people.
And I think that's important for our viewers to understand. The amount of shots you hit determines a lot. I mean, if you're a guy that just pounds the wedges, you may need it more often. What about when I hear on the tour a lot, like, oh, he got that wedge high on the club face? Explain to our viewers when somebody does that, what usually happens? It obviously doesn't go as far because it's high on the club face. What causes that, or what can you help our viewers understand about that kind of shot?
So, and that does happen a lot. And that dilemma is what drives me in wedge design, Pete, because a half an inch miss high in the face is really optimum on a driver. But we insist our drivers give us, a 1 to 1.5 inch circle around the face that's pretty dang good.
Yeah.
And we buy cavity back iron so that we have a 1 to 1.5 inch circle on the face that's pretty dang consistent. Mm-hmm. And yet the tour players have learned to hit their wedges because the wedge design, the traditional tour design wedges. I invite your listener, look at the wedges in your bag. Go look at wedges from 20 years ago, 40 years ago. That is the least evolved category in the game. Okay. And so what happens is modern wedges, the tour design wedges that proliferate the market, the optimum impact is on about the third or fourth groove, right down at the bottom of the club. It's a near blade, basically. And the tour players, you look at a tour player wedge and they've worn a spot out right there at the third and fourth groove that's about the size of a dime. Mm-hmm. When you go look at your wedge, and you're going to see a wear pattern that's the size of a silver dollar, and it's centered up about the fifth or sixth groove. Okay. We play fluffier fairways than they do, so the ball is sitting up more for us than for them. Okay. We don't have the skills. We haven't practiced hitting that ball on the third groove. Right. So we get a fraction of the efficiency out of the golf club on our best shots. So what the Edison wedge is really all about is rearranging the whole back of the golf club. It doesn't look like anybody else's wedge. Mm-hmm. And it's not about cavity back, because you don't want a thin face. You want mass behind the ball. But I designed the Edison wedges where your impact performance is optimized at about the fifth or sixth groove. If you hit it really good down on the third groove, you're going to get the same performance. But if you hit it up on the seventh or eighth groove, there's still plenty of mass up there to deliver gear effect and smash factor, which is what makes the ball propel forward. So when you go look at your tour design wedge and pull it out of your bag, and you feel the thickness of the face at the third groove, and it's very thick, but when you go up 3 grooves, that face is 200 to 230 thousandths of an inch thick. There's just no mass up there. Right. So when you, and this thing called gear effect, when you hit the impact on the face and most of the mass is below that ball wants to go up with no spin. The tour players that hit it down low on the face, they've got more of the club head above the point of impact, so the ball wants to stay down with lots of spin.
Okay.
So it's really as the ball impact point moves up on the face, even if the face is delivered the exact same way, which it typically isn't, but even if it were, the impact efficiency on the third groove may be 1.2. On the fifth groove, it may go down to 1.04, and on the seventh or eighth groove, it may be 0.92, which you're going to lose 18, 20 yards, and you missed your shot by 3/4 of an inch. And it's going to cost you 18 to 20% of your distance. The 3/4 inch miss on your driver costs you 6% of your distance. So, and it's what we've learned in wedges, it's about for distance consistency, it's about how much mass is directly behind that point of impact, not surrounding it like your cavity back iron or like your driver. It's how much mass is directly behind that point of impact. So what I've done with the Edison wedge is thicken the mass around the perimeter of that expected miss zone so that the half inch, the center hit is always optimized by the golf club as a whole. Right. But when you move over a half an inch toward the toe or up, you actually have a little thicker club head behind the miss than you did behind the center hit. Okay. So it's a totally different approach to wedges because, sometimes I want to, I would be so brash as to say, why do we even call these wedges anymore? What does that mean to anybody? And, it's like, I know that a lot of the big fitting studios, they try to fit you all the way through the wedges. And you're fitting on a 6-iron. Okay, in the hitting bay, and they're getting that. And then they're going to sell you a set of irons, and they're going to try to sell you all the way up to the approach wedge or gap wedge, whatever they call it, at 50 degrees. People don't think about this, but your 6-iron is probably the second or third longest iron in your set. And they're going to fit you 6 different golf clubs higher. But if your 6-iron is 28 degrees, which kind of standard nowadays is getting lower than that, it's to your 9-iron is 17 degrees. Okay, from that 6-iron. Okay. So is your driver. Your driver is also 17 degrees from the 6-iron. And nobody ever said, I love my 6-iron. Can you make me a driver that looks like this? Nobody ever said that.
No, I know.
So when we go down in loft from the 6-iron, in 6 or 7 degrees, I'm going to go to a hybrid. And another 6 or 7 degrees, I'm going to go to a fairway wood. And another 3 or 4 degrees, I'm going to go to a driver. So I'm going to go to 4 different head designs to optimize performance below my 6-iron. There's no way you can optimize performance above your 6-iron with the same club head design. It defies all logic. And that's where my approach is. It's like these clubs with, 38, 40, 45, 50 degrees of loft, they're different animals than that 28 degree 6-iron. They can't look like it because you don't want them to work like it. So I'm sorry, I kind of get on a rant there, but
no, it's
people don't know about this stuff. They don't stop and think about it.
Absolutely. I agree with you 1,000%. At our club, if I had a nickel for every driver that was on the driving range, I'd have buckets of nickels. Everybody wants to bang the driver off the back net, but you don't see them playing like the wedge or the putting. They just want to bang it as far as they can, and it's like that doesn't score you. So I want to help our viewers understand if I'm hearing you correctly. So let's say I'm going out and I'm buying a new set of irons. Would I be best to buy a 4 through 9 of a certain iron that I get fitted for, and then a separate purchase or a separate evaluation for my wedges? Would that be kind of what we're thinking about, or is it so?
I think that you could think that way. We're seeing more and more of these blended sets where they've got more of a blade type short iron, and it's. Without sounding completely self-serving, I think what we've done at Edison is we've optimized ball performance from 45 to 60 degrees because this is the progressive weighting. And I didn't look at these as wedges. I looked at this as how do you make a 50-degree wedge, which is mostly a full swing golf club? Right. How do you make that optimized performance for the widest range of golfers? Whether that guy plays a cavity back iron, whether he plays a tour blade, that's a different golf club than his irons. And how do I optimize? And how do I optimize that 45, 47 degree, club to be a better accurate scoring tool than the 6-iron design cavity back iron that the guy might be carrying? How do I make it a little more forgiving than the blade, but a lot more accurate than the cavity back? And when I look at the wedge category, you see the proliferation, or what I call tour design wedges. They're all pretty much alike. Strip away the graphics from this brand to this brand to this brand, and they're not much different. And those are for tour. They were developed with tour staffs. They were developed for tour level skills.
Right.
That guy buying those, he's playing a cavity back iron. You're not playing the iron the tour player plays. And your 7-iron skills are a lot closer to a tour player than your wedge skills. So you don't have a way. If you don't even think you can play that muscle back blade iron, you certainly can't play that tour design wedge. I mean, they are the most impact critical golf clubs in the game. The driver is being the least impact critical golf club in the game. Irons are very forgiving, but wedges, those tour design wedges. But the answer is not a cavity back wedge, because you've got all this thinness there.
Right.
And you need, like I said earlier, you need mass behind the point of impact, directly behind where the ball is contacted. You need thickness and mass there so that ball comes off consistently with optimized spin and optimized distance control. And that's what the Edison wedge is all about. It's like, sometimes I don't even want to call them wedges. They're scoring tools. We're in the scoring club business. This is money. And, this is where, I always said and that's money, even if you're not playing for any, because a lot of people don't play for money. Most golfers don't gamble on the golf course. Surprisingly, you would think maybe everybody had some kind of game going. Most golfers, they go out and play for fun. They go play for fun and excitement. And there is nothing more fun than hitting a wedge shot and watching it grab on the green 4 feet from the hole. There's nothing more fun than that.
Absolutely. I'd agree with you.
But, people don't practice their wedge shots. And in most environments, people go to the practice range. They're buying a bucket of balls for, X dollars, if you're not a private club where the balls are on the range for you.
Yeah.
And so people feel like, I've actually had people come up to me and I've got this big bucket of balls and I'm hitting little 15, 20 foot shots.
Yeah.
And I've had people literally say, why are you wasting all your balls? Because I'm not here to see how far I can hit them. I'm here to see if I can improve my skill sets.
Yes.
That's kind of funny because people perceive that as, I paid for that golf ball. I want it to go.
I got to hit the back net. I got to hit it 280 yards.
And a big booming drive is certainly exciting, But when you hit that big booming drive on the short par 4 and you're 68 yards from the hole, and then you hit it 15 feet short of the green and then the bunker, and you come out of the bunker along across the green, you chip back up and make 6 from 60 yards.
Yeah.
Then your buddies are always going to go, hey, Terry, nice drive.
Yeah, exactly. And I have people I play with, and that's the same way. It's like if they hit the long drive, it's like they have arrived. It doesn't matter that they got a double bogey when they walked off the green. It was just that they hit that 280-yard drive right down the middle.
Shot 94 today, but man, I was hitting that driver good.
I know. What would you tell our viewers if you had to like coach a golfer, the average golfer, let's say, I know average is over 90, but let's just say 15 handicapper. What percentage of time would you advise our viewers to spend in the wedge area? Let's put putting to the side. If you had to go a percentage, well, how much time would you devote as a goal to spend developing my short game, my wedge game?
Well, I think that's different for every golfer, Pete, because, some people are 15 because they can't hit it out of their shadow, but they're pretty good around the greens. They don't make very many doubles, but they just don't make very many pars either, and very rarely a birdie. Because, I look at a lot of seniors, and being 71, I still play the regular tees, the back tees. I'm very blessed. But a lot of the guys I play with, they're senior tee guys. And so I'm sitting here on a par 4 that from the white tee, it's a driver 9-iron for me. And from the gold tee, it's a driver 3-wood and a chip for them. It's like, move up. This is not a par 5 hole. Yes. I think the courses have their tees all screwed up. But I really advise people and I do this for myself. It's like when I go back at a round, and I'm very blessed to still play to a low single digit, but I'll say, okay, there was 4 bogeys on the card. Was that a driver-induced bogey? I hit it where didn't leave myself an approach. Was that an approach shot bogey, or was that a short game bogey, or was that a putter bogey? What was the big influencer on that bogey?
I love that.
And that'll tell you where to practice. If you go, what, I made 3 doubles today, and one of them was because I hit a ball out of bounds, and the other 3 was because I chunked 2 chip shots. Okay. Right. Or I made, if I'm a mid handicapper, I made 6 pars today, but I made 2 doubles, and made nine bogeys or whatever. But what caused those bogeys? Was it that I just hit bad approach shots and my chips didn't get me close because they were too hard, or my chips didn't get me close because I didn't chip very well? I believe that inside 50 or 60 or 70 yards, regardless of your strength profile, now you got a wedge in your hand, you're not making a hard swing, you should average something under 3 shots,
right,
regardless of your handicap, because I'm taking strength profile totally out of it. So inside 60 or 70 yards, just count up and go, what do I average inside 60 or 70 yards? Whether it's chipping after my approach shot, whether it's the third shot on a par 5 or a par 4, how many strokes do I average inside 60 or 70 yards? And then don't just look at your average, look at your mean and your median. So your mean is your average, right? But it's like, how many times do I get in the hole in less than 3 shots versus more than 3 shots?
right.
And what you really want is, man, it's a rare day that it takes me 4 to get down from 60 yards, 70 yards. Right. It's a rare, I just chunked one. I just made 2 bad swings. We're all going to do that. I read something one of the Champions Tour players said, I know I'm going to make 6 crappy swings around. This is a Champions Tour player. Now, his definition of crappy may be different than ours, but he says, I'm going to make 6 crappy swings. And then 2 of them may happen on the first hole. Hey, it's just going to happen, And so, we're all going to make bad swings. I mean, in fact, we're going to make more mediocre and bad ones than we do really good ones, even if we're a 4, 5, 6 handicapper, So it's all about setting your standards. But again, your goal is, if I'm inside 70 yards, the next shot needs to be a putt. And it needs to be a putt from inside 15 feet at least a third of the time.
Right.
And if my next shot is a chip after a 60-yard wedge shot, I need to really work on my 60-yard wedge shots.
Mm-hmm. What would you say I know our viewers, I really agree with what you're saying in that regard. When I am in the rough and I got a fluffy lie, or I'm 50 yards back from there, what does the viewer need to understand hitting a wedge out of the rough versus, a wedge in the fairway much further back? What would you pick? Would you pick the rough? Or would you pick
if you look at PGA Tour statistics, these guys are better from the fairway at 150 yards than they are from the rough at 100. They really are. If you look at the statistics, being in the fairway and a nice clean lie, maybe you play a golf course where you roll the ball a little bit and you improve your lie in the fairway. I'm a big believer. You can be too much of a stickler for playing it as it lies and all that. That's fine for the PGA Tour. They play it as it lies on perfect fairways.
Yes.
If you don't play perfect fairways, why do you want to go try to beat the ball out of tough lies? You're playing a harder game than the tour players playing. Why are you doing that? So to me, it's like, hey, if you're playing for fun, I mean, if you're playing a tournament and they're playing the ball down, you play it down. But if you're playing for fun, I think preferred lies, people think that's blasphemy, but I think preferred lies are fine. Why not? Why not give myself as good a lie as the tour player had? Because I'm not as good as him, But to your point, one of the things that I've really learned and share with people is don't instinctively and automatically go to your highest lofted wedge at 60, 80, 90 yards, 70 yards, 50 yards. If you carry a 52 to a 54 degree wedge, that's kind of your middle wedge.
Right.
Learn that golf club, because that golf club will give you more predictable distance, more predictable spin, and more predictable ball launch than your 57 or 59 will. It just will, because the more you loft the club, the more of a glancing blow you're getting on the ball. Mm-hmm. And I've adopted this and really kind of zeroed in on this in the last few years, and that my 53 degree is my go-to golf club on almost all of my shots. But we play a lot of the wind. We're on the Texas coast. But if I'm into the wind on my number 5 holes of par 5, it's, you've got that 60, 70 yard shot right into the wind. I'll go back to my 49 degree, but make my swing like if it was a 70 yard shot with the 53, and the 49 is a true pitching wedge, and it'll hold the ball down. And if the wind's really howling, I'll go all the way down to my 45 for that shot, because I want to, hitting it hard into the wind. And the tour doesn't play the wind very much, but we do every day here. 15 to 20 is our standard. 25 to 28 does not run us off the golf course. Wow. So you got to learn how to play the wind. But but I think that shot out of the rough, go to your little lower lofted golf club, because that's gonna give you a little better launch on the ball.
Okay.
That high lofted club, if the ball's sitting in the rough, it's easier to get that high lofted club under the ball, and that's your big demon in the rough is, if it's perched up, is getting too far under. So go to your 52, 54 degree wedge, go to your 48, 50 degree gap wedge on that shot and throttle back, and you'll see better control by choosing the club a little differently.
Yeah, I love that. And, that makes so much sense to make that adjustment based on the fluffy lie, because, a really lofted wedge, it's going to ride that club face easy.
Exactly.
There was a guy, he moved from San Diego, and he was playing Xander Schauffele, I think Xander gave him one shot. He moved to Atlanta for business. And so he was using a 64, and we have a hole where everything is down grain, and he was on the back of the green. And my friend said he took a 64, and you usually can't keep it on the green. It's so fast. And he hit a 64, and that thing checked and it rolled right next to the hole. And my friend about passed out. How delicate that 64. I mean, no golfer could hit that shot unless somebody's really, really, really good. So 64 wedge, is there a handicap? Like should a guy that's an 8 handicapper even carry a 64 in the bag? Generally,
you see more and more tour players going down from 60 and they're carrying 58 as their highest loft. These 60, 61, 64 degree golf clubs are extremely critical in your skill set.
Yeah.
And, I always tell people, say, Phil Mickelson is a magician with this 64. If you would take him on in $100 a shot up and down contest, then you ought to have one of those too. You don't have Phil Mickelson skills, and Phil Mickelson has spent thousands of hours in his 40 years of adult golf. He spent thousands of hours with that golf club learning how to do all kinds of things. But he doesn't hit those shots because he has a 64. He hits those shots because he's Phil Mickelson.
Yeah, and, that's a good point.
I mean, one of the interesting things, I was talking to a teaching pro out of San Antonio. It used to be a collegiate coach, played some tour golf early in his career, and got to know Seve a little bit. And he's in the bunker one day, and Seve and Bernard Langer are hitting bunker shots with 4-irons. They're hitting explosion shots with a 4-iron because they're that good.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys on the tour, we see these big drives. They're big, strong guys. They hit them out. We cannot aspire to that. When most of the golfers are our age, Pete. I mean, most golfers are not 25-year-old gym rats. They're 50-plus guys that are enjoying life and playing golf. That 330-yard drive, 240 is a big one for us, but we can have skills. I mean, we're not going to have tour player skills, but, we can have skills to get the ball, on the green and in the hole, and if we hit 5 greens around or 12 greens around, it's those other holes that we can still score. And, if the golf course is too long for your game, and I talk to my senior pros, and I'm on the golf committee at our club, and I've been really harping on this. It's like, we've got tees, we've got gold tees and red tees and silver tees, and we deem them seniors, ladies, and super seniors. Why don't we take that designation out of it? And why don't we go redo that? And if you play golf, don't be intimidated by the tee colors and designation.
Yes.
Par 4s are not 3-shot holes. If you don't get to hit half of your approach shots in a round of golf with an 8-iron or less, you're playing the course too long. And
that's great.
And why do you want to play? I talked to one of my seniors the other day. I said, if the tour golfers played a golf course the way you have to play it, the golf course would be 10,000 yards long. Because you're hitting a fairway wood on 80% of the par 4s. You're hitting a driver on one of the par 3s. You're hitting a fairway wood approach on 2 of the par 5s. If the tour players had to play courses like this, first of all, nobody'd do it.
Right.
And, but that's if golfers are playing courses too long for their skill sets and their strength profile. And to me, how can it be fun when you may get to give yourself a birdie putt on 3 holes, but the other 15 you can't even reach the green?
Right.
You give a birdie putt. I mean, why do you want to do that? At least have a chance to make birdies. That's and if you really want to play it like the tour plays it, you need to play it up on a par 5 so you can hit a 5-iron to all the par 5s on your second shot. That's what they do. but
And I
we're not
love
gonna
that
do it.
advice. I am all over that.
Move it up, the
Yes.
USGA talked about tee it forward. Move it up to where the game can be played the way it's intended to be played. And a par 4 is intended for you to be able to get on in 2 shots. A par 5 is intended for you to be able to get on in 3 shots. And a par 3 is intended for you to get on in 1 shot. So if there's a par 3 and you can hit driver and can't reach the green, you're playing the wrong tees.
Yeah. No,
simple?
I'm going to give my friends this podcast because they'll often say, this is before I my distance dropped down to a small a tighter distance. They'd say, come on, let's play it back. So I said, why? I mean, golf is fun. I'm not hitting a hybrid into every par 4. I mean,
Yeah.
but our mindset is if we can play it back, we're like the pros instead of the enjoyment of the game. And so let me give our viewers just, I think this is what I heard. So in a par 4, if you're not hitting an 8-iron in, if you're not, then your distance is too far, right? Are you saying that you should be hitting a majority of your par 4s with an 8-iron or less?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's a fun golf course is when I come off the course and I've worked through my whole bag. I've been challenged through the bag.
Okay.
And if I play a golf course and, of my 18, let's take the par 5s out because I'm typically going to have a wedge approach. But if the other 14 holes made me hit a 5-iron or longer 11 times,
right,
I didn't challenge the short end of I didn't challenge my short game, or my scoring game. I mean, if you look at tour players, they hit 3/4 of their approach shots with a 9-iron or less. Okay. If you're not hitting, half of your approach shots with an 8-iron or less, you're really playing a long golf course. And
gotcha.
I would say, and one of the things I've talked to our director of golf about and our general manager, I said, I'd like to get a group of our seniors and I'd like to go play the golf course backward and say, okay, here's 18. I'm a 71-year-old 2 handicap that still hits it respectful. This is a driver 7-iron for me. Let's let the senior hit a driver backwards from the green side and then hit a 7-iron. And that's where his tee ought to be. And then let's go to the next hole. And this hole is a driver 9-iron for me. So let's let him hit a driver and a 9-iron. And that's where his tee ought to be. And, design the course from the hole backward for these guys. But I mean, it makes no sense on our golf course. For example, there are holes where that senior guy that hits at 180 and I hit at 240, his tee is 5 yards ahead of mine. Well, I mean, he's playing a massively longer hole than I'm playing, but then by the same token, we go 4 holes later and his tee is 80 yards in front of mine. And I think a lot of these architects, there's no logic to where they're putting these tees. Now, my golf course was built 45 years ago,
right?
In persimmon woods and balata golf balls and blade irons, but still, it's the relative distance of the golf club. So, the course plays too long for these guys.
Yeah. If I remember,
I'd say you just put your ego aside and put your buddies razzing aside and play the tees that makes the game fun. And you should have, in my opinion, you should at least have a chance to make a birdie on every hole, at least a chance. I mean, like on my number 18 from the back tee, it's going to be a driver 4-wood for me. But you know what? I have a chance to make a birdie. It's not a driver 4-wood that I cannot reach, But if I'm playing that tee with a driver 4-wood and my gold tee buddy is hitting a driver a 3-wood and he's still 60 yards short of the green, he's playing a hell of a lot harder hole than I'm playing.
Right. Makes sense.
So, I just think we're out of whack. I mean, this game is supposed to be fun.
I do think it's gotten totally discombobulated with distance, and we get in our head that we got to knock the ball 300 yards, and that's the ultimate goal for golf, and it isn't. And, so the pros have kind of given us the wrong mindset about the enjoyment of the game just because we set our standards too high. If I remember correctly, and I didn't even ask you earlier, was there kind of an evaluation that you had? I remember way back when, like they would go in and we give them a kind of a assessment of their wedge game. Is that still something that you have?
Yeah, we have an exercise on our website called Wedge Fit, And
Yeah,
it's basically it's a question and answer for you to go through, and it lets us kind of understand your game. And we're gonna take those answers. We're gonna give you an immediate feedback of just kind of here's a surface look at kind of where you ought to be with your wedges,
Right.
shaft and specs and lofts. And then our team is going to look at that. And you're going to get another email from one of our team members in a couple of days. It's going to dive a little deeper into your answers. We're all about helping people score better. And, we're not just, obviously we build wedges that we 100% certain are going to help you score better.
Right.
We sell them all with 100% risk-free trial. You build your first one. We send it to you. You play it for a month, hit the shots, go the courses you like. Don't just go to the range and hit range rocks, go hit the golf shots you want. You're going to see differences. We call it the Edison difference. You're going to see these are different animals. It's kind of like that first cavity back iron or that first big driver. These are different animals than what you've been playing. And 98 out of 100 golfers are going to see that within 1 or 2 rounds. You're going to see, wow, I got away with that one, or wow, that ball really checked up fast. And, we're building a golf club that works, and you have to go put it to the test to see that.
That's good. Okay, we'll put it in the show notes so people can. What did you call it again?
It's called Wedge Fit. It's a wedge fit scoring range analysis.
So we'll put a Wedge Fit link in the show notes so people can take it. I believe in education in every aspect of the game. Yeah. I had a guy on there and he was talking about the importance of the shaft. Everybody just kind of goes for the newest and greatest head. But if you really got somebody to fit you with your right shaft, and my son-in-law just bought a set. He went to PGA Superstore and he had in his mind through advertising that he was going to get this set of clubs. But when he did the assessment, they really got his line, his trajectory with his lower clubs down. And so he wasn't hitting it way high and the wind wasn't taking it all. But it made a difference because he thought he was going to buy this. He ended up getting a different set when he was evaluated properly. So I believe
the shaft makes so much difference. And, if you go look at the major wedge brands,
right,
you've got, 100 golfers come through the store. And the bulk of them are seniors. They're playing lighter shafts. They're playing graphite. They're playing R flexes and A flexes. And that wedge rack is full of heavy, stiff steel shafts. And that's why I think wedges should be custom built. We don't make stock wedges. We build every set to order. And it's very important to get the right shaft. And I'm a big believer, whatever shaft is in your irons, it may not have been fitted to you, but you're used to it. You're used to that weight. You're used to that material. You're used to that flex. We do about 35% of our wedges in graphite shafts. I think it should be 70. Graphite is so amazing these days, and it delivers such wonderful feel, particularly for seniors and maybe getting a little arthritis in your hands. And but get those wedge shafts where what I call a seamless transition. Your 7-iron, your 9-iron, your gap wedge, they all have a similar feel in your hand. The weight of the club, the flex of the shaft. That's how you don't have a big disconnect between your last iron and your first wedge. I see it way too often in people's bags, and they've been fitted. They've got 65-gram A-flex graphite in their irons, and they've got 3 off-the-shelf wedges with 130-gram stiff flex steel. It's just it's like putting mud grips on your Maserati. I'm sorry, that's just not a good idea.
Yeah. And I think the education and the understanding of really not going to the advertising and just saying, okay, well, this player plays this club, but they're a pro. So understand that it's totally different. It's not apples to apples. It's apples to oranges, whatever that. So how would somebody get a hold of you? So what would be the best way for people to get a hold of you, Terry?
To interact with us, you'd come to the website, edisonwedges.com.
Okay.
From there, you can see our toll free. You want to call and talk to one of our guys. We got accomplished guys on the phone that can help you understand. And it's confusing for some people, but
yes,
they'll help you understand the sole design we have that I've designed over 30 years ago. It's the most versatile sole because, and we haven't talked about that, but the whole bounce fitting. I don't see how you fit something that I don't know what I need to fit to. I don't know what my next wedge lie is going to look like. Well, how are you going to fit me to that? I'm not sure what my next swing is going to look like. I'm an accomplished player, and I'll take wedge shots that I just barely nip the turf, and sometimes I'll take a wedge shot and I take a pretty good divot. Well, how can you fit me when I'm not going to take the same divot every time? And even as a 2 handicapper, I don't take the same divot every time. The 15 handicapper darn sure doesn't take the same divot every time.
You're right. No, I know it's been an education for me, even because I've read a lot of your stuff, and I've really enjoyed over the years just understanding more about the wedge part of the game. I'm a big proponent of putting, but I'm shifting now to wedge because I don't have the distance, and I may not ever get the distance back, but I'm going to have to be in the scoring zone so accurate if I'm going to compete at the level that I competed, because I was a 3 to a 6 before I had a stroke. So now I have to just think differently about the golf course than I ever have. What we always ask too, Terry, like, do you have anybody that you can think of that would be a good guest that could educate our community on being a better golfer, either mindset, gear set, or skill set? Anybody that comes to mind that you could refer?
I mean, I got been so blessed, Pete, to know so many people. Let me think about that, and people that might like to come on. That might like to share, whether it's an equipment person, whether it's a golf instructor. They're just, I've learned so much from so many people that have been so generous with their knowledge, and that's why I'm totally open to sharing everything I've learned about golf clubs. I don't have any secrets about this. There's nothing I do that the big brands don't know. They just,
you're focused on the short game wedges, where they're focused overall.
They're focused on different deals. So, one of the things that I think about is if you take a tour player and wedges, and I haven't gone on tour with my wedges. I don't want to go up. That's not what I want to do. Not that a tour player couldn't appreciate this. I've got a very accomplished teaching pro in San Antonio, drove down week before last, and he had seen my wedges at a South Texas PGA event. He's a former collegiate coach, former tour player, extraordinarily skilled. And he goes, this is stupid what you're doing. It makes so much sense. I don't care what your skill set is. It makes so much sense. Right. But, the high visibility tour guys, they're all on some big contract with somebody and having access to them. And the other thing is, between you and me, these guys can feel things in a golf club you can barely measure. And they're nightmares to work with. I've worked with them back in the 80s at Ben Hogan. I worked with them, Reed Lockhart. I mean, these guys can feel things they can feel things in a golf club and do things with a golf club, like Seve Ballesteros hitting bunker shots with a 4-iron.
Yes.
These guys are magicians. I mean, this is, 150 guys in the entire world of 50 million golfers that are good enough to do it for a living,
Yeah. And I think that's the mindset you have to do, is enjoyment of the game and realistic expectations of where you want to take your game. And it's an individual thing, not because you see somebody on TV. I've asked this recently because golf's in kind of a crazy world. And I did see this about Bryson's 58. He's using a driver, I don't remember the name, but because he can use whatever and he can put any club in his bag, he's not tied to a contract. He's using this driver that's off the wall, but shooting a 58 and winning that tournament, the sales didn't go up of that club because nobody knew about it. I mean, it wasn't blasted all over TV. So for me, I'm a geek when it comes to golf. I'm listening to every podcast, and this gentleman talked about that. What do you think? What's your thoughts on the LIV and the PGA? Just briefly, what do you think? What does that add to the game of golf today?
I'm kind of a contrarian on the subject because I think that this has been way too big of a story for the industry, for golfers. Right. I mean, you think about it, if the PGA Tour and LIV completely disappeared off the planet tomorrow, completely, do you know anybody that would quit playing golf? I don't know anybody that would quit playing golf because they're gone. I mean, it provides us an entertainment, but if the NFL went away tomorrow or the NBA went away tomorrow, if you don't make your living in that world, what difference does it make to you?
Good point.
And so, to me, I thought, and again, this is political. I thought the PGA Tour should have just said, hey, you've got an agreement with PGA Tour. If you play somewhere else, whatever, you forfeit your membership. See you later. And no lawsuit, no nothing. Just go, see you later. Hey, if you want to go, go. And if it's a good concept and if it lives, it lives. But getting in a legal fight with a bottomless pit of money. I had a guy tell me years ago, lawsuits is a very simple thing. The guy with the most money wins all the time.
Yes,
and
you're exactly right.
And so you're going to get in a spending contest with a bottomless pit of money. You're not going to win.
Yes.
And I think people made like, these guys aren't golf. They are TV golf entertainment. That's what they are. They are TV golf entertainment. And the PGA Tour is on TV every Saturday and Sunday, and the busiest days on every golf course is Saturday and Sunday. So people would rather play than watch. Okay. Right. And what a lot of people don't realize, because I been in the advertising world for a long time, as much as 70 or 80% of the TV audience doesn't even play the game. It's not avid golfers who are watching golf. It's avid TV watchers who are watching golf. And which is why most of us golfers, we love the U.S. Open, where these guys are struggling to break par. And, Joe Average over here, he wants to see him shoot 23 under on some soft, windless golf course. And I'm like, I don't want to see him shoot 28 under. I want to see him struggle. And I love to hear him.
I agree.
Hear him whine,
Yes.
And I tell people all the time, say, come watch a tour player hit, 10 bunker shots on my golf course, where every one of them is an entirely different bunker, not standard bunker, so it's just, I just think there's a kind of this inflated sense of self-importance by the organization.
I've asked that question. Yes. You know what? That's the best answer that I have gotten, because I geek out on this stuff. And so I've listened to hundreds of podcasts just because it's golf. But your idea of the entertainment element of it makes so much sense. And we are self-absorbed in our own sport. We think it's bigger than it really is. And it is simply entertainment. You're right. I would rather play than watch. No doubt.
And it's funny. It's funny, people talk about, the money and all this kind of stuff. And, and I mean, hey, these guys they don't have to play professional golf. They all supposedly went to college. They can go get a degree in the stock market or selling cars or running their own business. They have options. They don't have to do this. If you don't like the money, don't do it. Right. But if you want to talk about the money, then you need to put on a performance that draws the same crowd that an NBA performance draws, that an NFL performance draws, that a Major League Baseball performance draws. So, the NBA plays 82 games and they fill a 20,000 seat auditorium at $100, $200, $500 a ticket and get a TV audience. If you can do that, you will make their kind of money. But your show is not as interesting, apparently, as that show. So it's all about economics, Nobody's stealing you, and nobody's abusing you by making you play golf for a living. I'm sorry. Right. I got no empathy for that whatsoever. You can always
I love that.
Remember when the baseball guys went on strike some years ago, and everybody went, the heck with you guys, then we're not going.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, wow, the fans aren't on our side. It's like, people would I would die to be able to play baseball for a living like you do.
Sure, exactly. Good point, man. That rocks. I have asked a lot of people, but never have I heard that kind of philosophy, and I really, really do like it, because
I'm out there sometimes.
I know I'm going to give you credit on future ones, because I absolutely love that answer, and I think it sums up really the perspective that you always have to have in life. You can't just zero in one small thing and understand everything, because it usually takes perspective of all things to really figure out what's going on. So, but I appreciate Terry. Thank you.
There's another topic I think today that people are, what happens is people identify a problem in their own bubble and they try to identify the solution in their own bubble. Right. So this whole ball rollback thing, right, that the USGA is on.
Yeah.
Did anybody ever ask the ball manufacturers, hey, will you spend millions of dollars in research and development and production to make a golf ball that nobody will ever buy? It will be given to tour players for free. If I'm Titleist and Callaway and TaylorMade and Bridgestone, the guys that make golf balls, I would have gone to USGA and said, we're not going to design a golf ball that nobody will buy. We're not in that business. This because nobody's going to go out and say, hey, this ball's 30 yards shorter than the one I'm playing. That's the one I'm going to get. Nobody's going to do that. So to me, the big manufacturer should have nipped that in the bud and just said to the USGA, you can do this all you want, but you better be prepared to go invent the golf ball and build the golf ball to give to the players, because we're not going to do it. I mean, why would I go and spend R&D developing something that is not going to ever be sold? Yes. It's like nobody thought about it from the economic perspective.
No, I mean, it's always like zeroing in the wrong thing and trying to adapt. And you're right about that. And, the tees, where you play the course is so important. So if you want to make the course shorter, just play the tee shorter. And that'll, the ball doesn't have anything to do with it, because you're right. They got to sell balls. I mean,
the thing is that golf equipment. In fact, one of my experiments I'm getting ready to do, I left San Antonio in 1998, and I played this country club for 20 years. All through the Bellata and Persimmon days and into the early Metalwood days. So I left there 25 years ago. So I was 45 years old, 46, and so what I want to do is go, because I know that golf course like the back of my hand. I want to go back and play that golf course and see what are 26 years of aging and 26 years of technology. How close are they to offsetting one another? I think it would be a fun experiment to write a series of blog articles about, hey, I know this par 3 was always a 6-iron for me, and heck, I'm hitting an 8-iron on it. Or no, I'm not. I'm hitting a 5-iron now. And, or this par 5, I could always get home with a driver 4-wood. I can still get home with a driver 4-wood, or I can't get close with a driver 4-wood. And I think it'd be very fun to see, the kind of how they offset one another.
No, I think you're right. And, I go back to that, what you just said about the ball manufacturer. I've heard many accomplished golfers from Nicklaus on down. Nobody has said what you just said. Nobody. I have not heard that thing ever been discussed. Like, which ball manufacturer is going to take the plunge and go, I'm going to make it 30 yards shorter? I mean, that's suicide. I'm
going to make a ball that nobody's going to buy.
Yeah, exactly. And you're
asking another
manufacturers economically to take it in the shorts. And who is going to do that? Maybe if you're in a foreign country and they control everything, but we're here to thrive in business. And golf is a business.
Another thing that's interesting, I don't know if you saw this, but at the Scottish Open, somebody had a launch monitor out and brought a persimmon wood out to Rory. Did you see this?
No, I did.
So Rory hits this persimmon driver and flies it 267. Okay. And on the launch monitor, and hit his driver right behind it 331.
Whoa. Okay?
So there's 60 yards in the driver, and you're talking about the golf ball, the ability to swing as hard as you can at these big drivers. The fact is, the cat's out of the bag on distance. The tour players, they're big, strong, seasoned athletes. They got all kind of coaches. They've got all kind of launch monitors to optimize everything. They're going to the gym. They're doing all these things. The cat's out of the bag, and that's where my whole deal is. Hey, do you want to protect score? What is your goal? Yeah. Do you want to try to keep these guys from scoring? I'll tell you how to keep them from scoring. Now, but the TV audience does not want to keep them from scoring. And the PGA Tour has one product, and that's television. Mm-hmm. That's where all their money comes from. And the TV audience doesn't want to see these guys, hit drives 275, and not make any birdies. They don't want to see that. Yeah. So my deal, but if you really want to do that, from 280 to 350, you just go rough across the fairway that deep, and then nobody's going to hit it past 280 because they're not going to hit it into that crap. And then if you want to do that, then what you do is you take your greens from these 11 and 12 stemp pool tables,
right?
Make them roll 8 and be them bumpy. Hey, the ball's not going to go in the hole if you don't. But why do you want to do that? Nobody wants to buy that. Yes, the people want to buy a TV show, and basically the PGA Tour sells a TV program. That's what they sell. Yep. And if that TV program gets a lot of viewers, it gets big advertising revenue. And if it doesn't get viewers, it doesn't get advertising revenue. So the PGA Tour is very well. They know what their product is. Their product is TV, and and golfers don't find some no name at 8 under par winning the tournament. It's just not what people want to watch.
Yes.
So they got to nurture their stars. But, again, how many guys on the PGA Tour would choose a different life, if they were playing for a third of the money they play for? How many of them would say, this isn't worth my time anymore?
Right.
None of them.
Hey, they love it. They love the game. The money.
They're going to play because they can. How many of them are out there that are 30, 35, 40 years old that are still journeyman grinders on the Korn Ferry Tour because this is the life they want?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
It's been fun with you today. We're way over your time limit.
Oh, I know. I tell you. Well, it's funny. I was walking by our exercise room in our facility, and one of my buddies, he's 82, he waves me in, and 45 minutes later, we're talking golf, and he's working out, and we're talking golf, and it's like, whenever you talk golf, you try to keep a limit on it, but it's so much fun.
Well, I think we did a good job the first 30 minutes, and before we got in more conversational. So
yeah.
But hey, I really appreciate you having me on, Pete.
All right, thank you, Terry, for taking the time to enlighten our viewers about that short game and the wedge part of their game. Thank you.